Welcome to Yes Also. I'm Susie Barrett. My guest today is incomparable delight, Holly Laurent. Holly came up in Chicago where she was a member of the legendary I.O. team, The Reckoning, and was on main stage at Second City for 3 years. She now co-hosts the incredibly popular improvised podcast Mega, and if you haven't heard it yet, you gotta go check it out. This is another banger of an episode. Holly is so vulnerable and so poetic and open-hearted, and she has one of the most bizarre journeys to improv that I've ever heard. So I really appreciated her sharing that in such great detail. If you are not yet a subscriber, you're missing out on a ton of content over at yesalso.supercast.com. And if you're not yet following us on Instagram, get over there too. That's where we share video clips and pics of our guests throughout their improv journeys. That's at yesalsopod on Instagram. And with that, Holly Laurent. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Oh,
Absolute pleasure.
my pleasure.
Oh,
Let's not fight over whose pleasure it is.
It's because it's a really big fucking pleasure of mine, Susie.
But it's also mine. You have come into my improv sphere somewhat recently, like a year and a half ago or something.
Yeah.
We had orbited each other. I had heard your name a million times, but I had never met you or played with you. And then we landed on a team together. And I'm just blown away by your talent, your also just how you are as a person. You're just so instantly wonderful and warm and easy to talk to. And I want to know everything about you. I've learned some from chatting with you backstage and things.
Backstage and on stage has been it.
Yeah, that's it. Let's dive in.
I think we met on stage.
Yes.
I mean, we might have said hi in the
We were
green
like
room.
on our way to on stage, like putting our coats on a table at the Lyric Hyperion, and it was like, hi.
Hi.
Oh, yeah.
But pretty much the first time we looked in each other's eyes and spoke to each other, we
Was
were in
as
a
characters.
show. Yeah. Which is how I like to do it.
That's how you do.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you always want to be a comedian? How did comedy arrive in your life? How did it become improv? Clear up the beginning of your story for me.
Ooh, I think I always knew I was funny, and I preferred funny over everything because I came from a very serious world. There was violence in the home that I grew up in, and I was part of a high control religion where my dad was a traveling evangelist, like very, very intense.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun.
Very, very intense. And so I grew up, it's interesting because I see it very much as what my dad was doing was a performance.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a very charismatic speaker and communicator. And from when I was crawling to toddling, I was witnessing the power of performance and its ability to move groups of people, and the power of communication and magical connection of live moments and all of that. And my dad was a great storyteller, so he stood out in the Christian evangelical fundamental world because so much of it was stuffy and boring. You would have a pastor standing in a pulpit and it was very serious. My dad would get up there and he would walk out from behind the pulpit and he would pace back and forth and he would act out the story of like Jesus picking a leper, and he would point to someone in the audience and be like, Ryan, you're gonna be the leper. Get up here, Ryan. Now get on your knees and shout out the word unclean. And did you think Jesus was afraid of that dirty little leper? No, here's how I think Jesus treated him. And he would stand the guy up and embrace him in a godly hug. And
You dirty, filthy leper. I'm touching you. You're so fucking dirty.
I mean, and honestly, he would, as Jesus, he would stand before the leper who's on his knees. So it's already looking a little like, suspect in terms of like, don't put your dick so close to the leper's face, Dad. But then, and I watched how that fucking moved people, and they were so profoundly affected by both his ability with storytelling, but then also my parents. This all kind of was an outgrowth of. In my earliest years, I grew up in a van with my parents' Christian rock band in the late 1970s, early 80s.
Title it. What was the name?
The Good News Circle.
Uh-huh.
And they were traveling the country, bringing the good news of the gospel to tent revivals and county fairs and high school assemblies and stuff, like with playing music that was very reminiscent of the day. Like it was very, some of it sounds like the Dead, some of it very Mamas and the Papas, CCR.
They're like religious Partridge Family.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very Simon and Garfunkel.
God.
Sounds creep into the Good News Circle.
Do they have any on vinyl? Because
Yes.
I will buy it.
Several. I can bring them to you.
Please. Yeah, I would love to own one of these records.
They're amazing. Yeah, they were. And so.
And were you in the band, just to clarify? No. Okay.
No. It was a band of adults, and I was sitting backstage. Usually there would be folding chairs, and they would sit me on a folding chair and be like, "Don't move," and I would wait till they had forgotten about me, and then I was like off and about and looking for candy and like. Going all over the fairgrounds or playing around in the empty high school, while they're in the assembly hall or whatever. And I saw how music has that incredible ability too, to move people and to create a sense of connection and purpose and meaning and euphoria and all of these events that whether it was the Christian rock, whether it was the Good News Circle or whether it was what my dad started doing is at the end of a concert, he would then do like a really charismatic talk about this powerful love of Jesus, this counterculture Jesus dude who's loving you like you've never been loved before. And he would have altar calls and the audience would flood the stage and they'd be on their knees at the quote unquote altar and having tearful conversion experiences. And as a little tiny kid, I would be sitting on the side watching that from the side and being like, wow, it's that idea of conversion. I guess I also was sensing that there's a coercion inside of that. And here I was part of this high control religion that's anytime you're trying to like convert and evangelize people, whether it's a vegetarian trying to evangelize you or a Christian trying to evangelize you, I just saw the power of it. And I saw those tearful altar calls every night. And I was like, I don't like crying. I like laughing. And I thought life was one or the other. And I was like, I'm going for laughs. Just as like maybe my rebellion of my parents' lifestyle.
Yeah.
And also I watched my dad use it and I knew I had it. And I liked that it drew people to you because I think in a high control religion like fundamental evangelicalism, I always had imposter syndrome and was so frightened of being cast out of the group.
Right.
So I started to foster my funny because I figured it was like a plan B for belonging in terms of like human safety and survival of being accepted by the group, because
you could offer that as a unique angle that the other people in your youth group or whatever didn't have, and so it made you valuable because you were the only one that was able to make everybody laugh. Is that kind of what the
I think so.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think too that I was using it a little bit like defensively. I did a MDMA assisted, a MAPS program assisted a journey for PTSD healing. And one of the things that when I was on this high dose of MDMA that I saw this like empty, flat ocean, like when you're in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing on the horizon but just flat ocean. And as I was there in this vision, I saw this like aircraft carrier surface like of a destroyer like in the middle of nowhere in the ocean, and the entire surface of it was covered with these like sensory kind of like surface to air missiles, just like in such defense of like if anything comes I'll be like bow 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 bow. And as I was looking at it I was like, is that me? Why am I seeing this? Like I'm not a fucking like isolated like surface of just like if you come near me I will shoot you out of the sky. But then I started thinking like, oh, is that what I do when I get sat at a wedding reception at a table of people where I feel uncomfortable? And so I'll just crank up the funny as a way to like if there's some white straight guy sitting next to me who's like powering up in status, I'll just be like with like comedy where I'll just be like, try motherfucker, I'll take you out. Like with anything you say I'll come up with like a comedic way to. So I was like, whoa, am I using comedy like that like for safety too? It's all stuff I'm sort of working through.
Yeah, man, that image is so powerful, and it immediately struck me before you got to the actual what the metaphor meant for you, but that I was like, man, that is what we're doing to the planet. The irony of like we have this so like placid, beautiful, peaceful, gorgeous setting, and we stack it with missiles and bombs just in case. And it's like, why can't we just enjoy this jewel that we live on? Like it's so peaceful here if you take all that stuff away, you know?
Yeah, if you're quiet, maybe you'll see whales.
Right.
Or dolphins.
Right. Feel the sun. Listen to the breeze. Yeah.
It's like that scene in Joe versus the Volcano where he's floating at sea on those trunks.
I saw it years ago and it's not familiar enough in my brain, but what is the scene?
Tom Hanks is floating on these trunks and he's lost at sea and he's burned and he's dehydrated and he's starting to hallucinate. And you know how sometimes when the moon rises in a certain angle of when it's low on the horizon, it looks massive. Mm-hmm. The moon started to come up and it was massive on the horizon, and he's lying on these trunks at night in the middle of the ocean. And he sees the moon and it starts to come up and he starts to try to stand in his weakened state. And he just stands up and he's standing like a starfish with his arms and legs outspread, just like, oh, almost just like worshiping the moon.
Yeah.
And it's this really powerful scene where he just goes, I'm sorry, I forgot how big. And I'm like, yes, that's the moment I try to live in constantly. It's like, oh my God. Even when you're at your most anxious, most depressed, all of that, like if you stop and connect with fucking nature in any way, you'll have a like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot how big.
Yeah.
That can even happen to me with like bees in my neighborhood where I'll be like, whoa, I'll look at like, wow, this tree is like covered in blossom. Oh my God, there's 100 bees over here. And oh my God. And if you just stop for 10 seconds.
It's everywhere.
You're like one thought away from like completely changing your reality. That's what I'm fucking working on.
Man, all of this is so like at the center of my bullseye, or at the bullseye of my dartboard. I don't know. Do bullseyes have a center? I guess there's two bullseyes. Anyway, we can talk about that. Different podcast. But like the resonance of what you're saying. I also grew up in a religious family, but that did not strike my personal chord, especially as I got older and defined my own character and my own, and started bucking against the shame that creates, you know, and the mandates and all of that stuff, when it's like, no, but isn't the most beautiful part of life that we're free and we can be who we are and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, but I find my spiritual joy in nature and in comedy. And I've oftentimes said improv shows are my church. Yeah. We gather in this communal experience. It's joy, it's love, it's sharing in ideas despite whatever our differences and backgrounds are. Yeah. And you get to like catch up with your community. You all have each other's backs. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that the navel of your growth, your path as a performer and as a charismatic, funny person traces back to your dad and that setting. When you were young, watching these conversions and watching his charisma, his power, if we can say that, for sure, were you clocking, like, as at that young age, were you clocking, oh, this is coercive and this is kind of icky, or was that not until later days? I fully believed that like this is the truth and everyone needs this truth and this is what's going to save the planet. I mean, the stakes were so high, and my parents constantly told us like that there is nothing more important than Jesus. It goes Jesus, and then it goes your spouse, and then it goes your kids. And so I knew my place. I was a third. If there are any fun couples out there, I make a great third. But I think that's such a good question. When's your first memory of it starting to taste bitter, or you seeing the strings of the puppet master?
I think I saw the strings the whole time, but I still thought, but at least we're using it to peddle the truth, and the truth will set you free. So it's all worth it. It's good. But what was happening simultaneously for me the entire time, even when I was hook, line, and sinker, I had a feeling that it wasn't for me. It wasn't working. I couldn't find the Jesus gear in my shifter. I was like, fuck, I don't have that. It's like Jesus is diesel and I'm gasoline. I'm just like I always had that sense, and it scared the shit out of me. And so
right. Talk about shame
and fear. And the stakes are high because it's like only eternal torment,
right?
You know? So it was like, Christ. So I was it was so fear-based to me. And then, but I always was such a critical thinker, like constantly. And I would always give them shit. You know, I would from an early age be like, Dad, why are you always laying hands on the girls in tube tops? You know what I mean? Like, and so I was always just a little like fuckface shit talker. And that led me to like, I just was, I even when I did believe it, I knew that it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. And so that just made me feel like fear outcasts and stuff. And that's also why I think, like you mentioned, I've got your back. I think the first time anyone in improv told me I've got your back, like I became a changed person. I was like, this is my new drug. All I've ever wanted is for someone to have my back. I remember like in high school with low self-esteem being like, if there was one person, if I had one friend who I knew would stand up to me, you know, when Tiffany Butts she's threatening to kick my ass at the football game. So I just can't go to football games anymore. And I have to be late every day for gym class because I have to hide in the stalls of the bathroom before I change into my gym uniform because Tiffany's going to fucking kick my ass. And I remember just being like, if I just had one person. So that's why I think when I had a team of 9 people all looking at me being like, I got your back. If you do something weird, I'll do something weirder. If you go out on a limb and you realize you're fucking falling, turn around and I'll be falling with you. It's like, well, that's all I've ever wanted.
What a beautiful mirror, a mirror of opposites. Yeah. Like the center of the overlap is like in both cases, someone is laying a hand on you and converting you. Yeah. But in the first case, it's you must change because the way you are is wrong. Right. And if you don't, you're going to leave this building and be tortured for eternity. Yeah. And in the other laying of the hand, it's someone going, you're weird and I love it. And whatever you do, I'm going to match it because I'll be weird too. And we're here together. Yeah. and I was wired for that intense community where you have leaders and you have language and you have creeds and you have ways of like that what that high control religion was that I was wired for growing up. It's totally mirrored in improv. We have our leaders, we have our lingo, we have our events, we have our rituals, we have all of that same stuff. So I was like, oh, this is great. Mm-hmm. Like I was taught that I have a Jesus shaped hole in my heart, but turns out I just have a comedy shaped hole, and all I have to do is like hang out with other weirdos who are, and that was a very strange sensation for me to be like early on in improv, like when I was at the theater every single night, and you know, you would just show up even if you don't have a show and end up watching shows, and you if somebody had cage matches or slugfest, you watched every single one. Like, have you seen Katie Nonsens slugfest? No, but I'm gonna be this week. I'm gonna be, you know, it was a badge of honor to know everything that was going on in the community. And as I like committed and dove in, I kept noticing that I would have these strange sensations of like, they're going to find something out about me that will get me cast out of this community. Ooh. And then I would always be like, but no, not really. Because this fuckface is hammered every day and everybody's still being cool to him. And this dickhead, you know, is stealing from the till to the tune of $100,000. Totally. And I was like, oh, I guess the only thing that can really get me knocked out of here is like not being funny and not being a sport where I'm like, yeah, I'll play, I'll jump in. Mm-hmm. Like just as long as I show up, as long as I came to play, then this is a place where I'm welcomed. And also it's expected that there's probably something fucked up about me. Yeah. And that was a real fucking relief. And it's welcome. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're weird, like if you're silly, if you're a quote unquote freak in your high school, it doesn't matter. It's improv is freaks and geeks, you know, totally. And jocks and bankers and divorcees and grandmas, and it's everybody get in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your early, you came up in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Improv wise.
Yeah.
Connect the dots for me from early religious upbringing in a van to like finding improv and getting to Chicago. What's that journey?
Well, I was studying drama in college, and our drama professor had spent the summer at a Paul Sills camp and came back all high on improv and was like,
Paul Sills, the son of Viola Spolin and the founder of Second City.
Yeah. And so our professor in the drama department came back and was like, we're going improv and it's going to be so great. And I remember being like, oh no, because I was just terrified of it. And I had such low self-esteem that like when you're on book, it's somebody else's words. I can't be judged for it. I'm just delivery, you know?
Right. I'm the messenger.
And improv, everything comes from you. And so I was so scared of being perceived, of saying something wrong. I like, there's a weird religion coming out of a high control religion. There's a type of OCD called religious scrupulosity, which is like a perfectionism because the stakes are so high that you get really perfectionistic in an OCD way. But it's like with the idea of God. And I had that so bad. I had this like really intense perfectionism of scrupulosity that made me feel paralyzed in improv, because I was like if I go out and do something wrong, I will be cast out or whatever. It was still so, the stakes were so high. And so I would never go out. I would like stand on the back line, my knees would knock. I was like, oh, so scared. And then it slowly started to speak to me, and then I got on like a short form team that like played at a wine bar, you know, and we would be doing short form games for winos, and I had heard of Second City in Chicago, and I had heard because everyone I liked on SNL had like come through Second City, like, oh, Bill Murray was at Second City, and all my favorites were from Second City. So I was like, I have to go to Chicago and I have to go to this Second City. So as soon as I graduated, moved to Chicago, found a roommate on Craigslist, and started going and finding the pamphlets at Second City and looking at all their different offerings. And I was like, well, maybe I have a degree in acting or in drama. So I was like, I can audition for this improv for actors class. And so I got in, and my first day of class was in the main stage at Second City Chicago. Norm Holly was the teacher, and he was just smoking in the dark, and he's like two people up with like no preamble or anything, and I was like, oh my God. And I ran up on stage for the very first scene ever, because I was like, if I don't go right away, I might never go. I'm so scared. And I ran up on stage, and this other guy came up too, and we both grabbed a chair and we sat them down, and I think we were like at a bus stop, and we just started talking to each other at bus stop. Do you know who that guy was?
Steve Martin.
And he had a banjo.
That man went on to become Judy Garland. No, who was it?
Jordan Peele.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great first scene partner.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Like, and this was like late 90s, I think.
That tracks. Yeah, like 98, 99,
yeah.
I think was when he and Beck got to Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't think he came back to class, or I never really saw him again after that. And then I got into the conservatory, and then somewhere in my classes at Second City, people were like, you Improv Olympic, you got to go to IO, you got to go to IO this, IO that. And I'm like, what are you saying? IO? What are you saying? What is that word? And they're like, IO. And I figured it out, and a girl from my Second City class, I was like, do you want to go? And we went up and saw an upstairs show at IO that was I think it was in Armando, and our jaws just hit the ground. We're like, wait a second, this is so smart and complex. And the way I remember it sort of being described back then is that like IO was the place where you learned the art of improv, and Second City was where you learned the business of improv.
Oh, interesting.
You know? And I was like, ooh, there's something about the like art for art's sake vibe that was at IO that I just was, I was like, oh my God, I jumped in with both feet. And I spent 10 years there every single night, watching every show I could, taking every class I could, going all the way through the IO and Annoyance and Second City and anywhere I could, and just being like, oh, this is my everything.
Yeah, I love it. What a character arc to go from hugging the back wall, terrified that you're going to make a wrong move if you move at all, to diving in and swimming for for all it's worth. Do you have any pointers for people who are like terrified to make moves, to get out, who are still maybe in the very nascent months of their improv journey and feeling that scrupulousness? Like, anything?
I think that if you can identify the thing that's scaring you the most, for me, I think it was, especially once I got to IO, I was like, these motherfuckers are so smart. I used to sit and make charts. I would chart improv shows, and I would be like, Peter Gwynn did a professor with Tourette's like at 10 p.m. And then I would look, and when he came back as the professor, I'd be like, he just came back as the professor at 10:45. That's a 35-minute callback. And I would I would make graphs of it, and I would be like, how are they remembering this? And then I would go home and I would sit in bed and I would look at remember, what's it called when you would do that with sentences in English? You would have to
diagram a sentence. The subject, the predicate.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
I was doing that to shows. I was diagramming shows. And so I would and I would put time signatures on anything you did. I'd be like, Susie was a bear here, and Susie was a bear 2 more times. So she did that 3 times. And I would study the diagram of the show. I would just sit, and then I would make lists. I'd be like, I have to think of every type of emotion I can come up with, because you have to lead with an emotion and a want. And I would make lists of wants, and then I would make lists of characters, and then I would make lists of premises, and then I'd be like, no, the premises aren't serving me. That's fucking me up. Okay, I can't do premises. Okay, I have to do, and I would just sit and think about it constantly and worship it. Okay, so anyway, back to your question.
That's fascinating. I picture you you're Goodwill Hunting, writing equations on the mirror,
Yeah.
Premise plus funny equals, no, that's not the answer.
I know, exactly. But I still have all those notebooks.
Wow. Will you screenshot a page from that and we can put it on the Instagram?
God,
that would be an
so
incredible
to see it. It would just be like snowball monster, masturbating bunnies, all the improv scenes make no sense. But I think for the person who feels as terrified or as locked up as I was, I would say if you can identify what it is you're most afraid of. For instance, for me, the thing I was most afraid of was that I was ignorant, uninformed, dumb, and I was going to be found out for being that.
Oh, God.
And I think it's because I grew up without TV, so I already had this thing where I had learned how to kind of pass, and I'd be like, I can talk about Gilligan's Island, Ginger's so hot, right? And I would try to pass all the time. And so I think I was doing that in improv. I was like, I felt like an imposter in that I was like, I'm probably dumb. These people are really smart. And so I was trying to come off as smart, and because I thought you had to be. So I think if you can identify the thing you're most afraid of, which for me was oh, my fear is that I'm dumb. If you can identify that, and then if you can believe me when I tell you, it won't feel intuitive, but believe me, that thing is the portal to your most free, authentic play. When I let my little fucking dummy speak, I started to get all these big laughs that I didn't know where they were coming from, because my inner dummy was getting them. When my intellectual facade character that I was out there with I was engineering these laughs, and so I was mimicking someone else, or I was trying to use the formula or whatever. When I finally let my little fucking inner weirdo speak, and she was so starved in a closet under 10 locks, but when I finally let her out, and she was my funny bone. So I think the thing you're most afraid of us seeing about you is actually your amazing player.
Wow.
I think.
That's profound. That's profound.
That's what it was for me.
And now the trick is, because I'm like, how do I do that on myself? Identifying my like one biggest fear, you know? Yeah, that is so powerful. And you play weirdo, oddball characters so well. They're so lovable. They're so delightful. You're so good at like diving into children characters so authentically and so specifically. Like the way that you inhabit them is like, oh man, I knew that kid. The voice, the posture, you know, you play kids who will have like a non sequitur thought, and your out of the blue thought is just perfect and poetic, you know. I love the way you play those aspects, and you do play smart as well. I'm sure, like, you know, I'm seeing you after you know, decades of work and practice and confidence. But it is so cool that you're a switch hitter in that way.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So it's blowing my mind also that we were in Chicago at the same time and didn't know each other. And I don't know how.
I know. What were your years?
I got there in 2000, like the spring of 2000. And then I left for Boom in January of 2003.
Yeah.
So like right in there.
Right. That's what I mean. I think I got there 98, 99, but I must not have been, you were at IO, right?
Yeah.
I must not
and
have,
Second City. Yeah.
how did we not?
I don't know. I mean, I was below you. I was like in classes. So I was the nerdy kid, like watching every show, but I don't know how I didn't see you on Teams then.
I don't think I was really on Teams until... Not that I might have been on a Herald team at IO in the early 2000s.
What was your Herald team at IO?
The Reckoning.
I know of The Reckoning. I feel like the Reckoning was getting buzz right as I was leaving or right after I left or something. I remember like hearing. Yeah. And it was like all these great people that I had seen on other things. Yeah. But yeah.
I think we took off after you took off.
Yeah, right. So let's dive more into the journey of it, the IO, the Second City. Talk me through like, so you're lit up, you're passionate. It's feeling like how long did it take for you to go through that portal, into Delightful Weirdo?
I think I was well into being on the cast of Main Stage and in a set, in an improv set after a review on a Tuesday night or something at Second City, where I figured it out like mid-scene.
Whoa.
Like, so I was already like on Main Stage of Second City, like, and you know, in those improv sets, like the audience is already with you because you've already done 2 acts of like crafted material for them. And so they're like, this kicks ass. So then when you do the sets, you're getting laughs you didn't necessarily earn, I think. Yeah. And so it's such a friendly, warm room. But I think there was something about the safety of that, where in one moment in a set where it's already on Main Stage, like I was already like, this is what I'm doing for my job. I have benefits at the moment. You know, I'm in the equity union. Oh my God. I had already been doing improv every day for over 10 years. By the time I actually felt safe enough to let my inner weirdo start speaking.
Wow. Do you remember the scene and the moment?
Yeah, I was with Edgar Blackman, and I can't remember the line, but it was something, I think I was talking about my ass. I was like, if I may direct you to this fucking sweet, juicy peach, it was something. And I realized like, oh, that's something I would never let myself say or whatever. But it was like the way I actually like felt about my ass. And I didn't think you were allowed to like something about yourself or talk about, you know, I was always like, I have to be smart. I have to whatever. I can't be like, certainly not going to sexualize myself or whatever. And then when I did it, it just got this massive laugh. And I was like, wait, I didn't do that. my starving inner weirdo did that. Maybe I should start letting her out into the light and feed her something.
Oh man.
I wish I could remember.
Do you remember what the scene was up until that point? I mean, I'm picturing like two politicians getting like drafting a law or something, but
I can't remember. I cannot remember. But one of my favorite things that happened on that stage is that Tom Hanks had a kid graduating from Northwestern and came for a graduation, and he was like, I'm bringing the whole family to Second City because evidently when Tom Hanks was early on in his career filming something in Chicago and he was really young, he would come to Second City every night and watch the improv sets, and he was like mesmerized by them.
Oh, cool.
So he's like, I'm going to bring my family. And we were like, will you get up and play? Will you get up and play? And he was like, oh. And he was like, if my kid can get up too. And it's the kid who's like, not
Colin.
Yeah. It's that other one who's like, yeah, not Colin.
Other Hanks.
Yeah. And he was kind of being a dick on stage. And we were trying to figure out how to get him to pipe down and get more of Hanks in the scenes. And I was playing it, and I played a scene where, I was this like woman in like a double wide trailer, and I kept having handyman come over to fix things that were fake because I was just trying to basically then just like come on to the handyman, and like I was like a really scary, aggressive woman, and so I'm in the middle of that scene where I'm like coming on to the handyman, and he's like bent over under the sink, and all of a sudden Tom Hanks comes rushing into the scene, and he's like, honey, I'm home. What are you doing? And he starts yelling, and he's like, why do you have another man here or something? And he grabs my hand, and he shows it to the plumber guy. And he's like, do you see this hand? There's a ring on this finger. And I just was looking at my hand because I was like, Tom Hanks is holding my hand. So I was just looking at his hand. I was like, oh, I was totally out of the moment. And when I looked at his hand, he was like shaking like a leaf. And this was like after he was already like, Tom Hanks. And I'm like, he cares. He's nervous in an improv set. It was one of my favorite fucking moments ever.
Sometimes I forget how big,
right?
I'm
sorry, I forgot.
Yeah. Tom Hanks. I mean, that's profound. I didn't know you were on main stage at Second City. That's so cool.
With Timmy Robinson and Sam Richardson and Katie Rich and
oh my God.
that cast, the 99th Review, South Side of Heaven was like such a special show.
What years were those?
That was 2011, 12, and 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, so let's go through that journey. Did you do Tour Co leading up to it, that whole track at Second City?
Yeah, well, I had been told that the way you have to do it is you have to go sit on the bench and just have your nose up Beth Klickerman's ass and just do anything and be willing to just be like shit on constantly and go into a million patch codes and constantly be understudying and all that stuff. And I went and sat on the bench for Main Drain like maybe 2 or 3 times.
For the listeners, there is a bench on the side wall. It's like to the right of the audience. It's almost like a church pew. It's like a long wooden bench. And people who are like graduates of the program and like friends of the improvisers and whatever can come in and watch from there. And sometimes you'll be invited up to do the improv set at the end.
Yeah.
As a part of because the Second City show is like a sketch show with a little improv 20-minute set at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. Sorry,
okay.
I just wanted to fill people in what the bench was.
Thank you. That's such good history. So everyone was like, you just got to sit on the bench, sit on the bench, sit on the bench. And so I did it maybe like a few nights in a row. And I very quickly was like, fuck this and get fucked. I'm not going to sit here and watch other people do it like I'm some kind of a goddamn cheerleader and not being on the fucking court. I'm like, I can go up to Iowa or Annoyance or anywhere, like any little storefront in this thing and do it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit and watch other people do it every night in hopes that you call on me. So I was a little bit, that might have been unwise. It definitely made it take a lot longer. But I auditioned year after year after year for the touring company, and I never got it. And one year I got a call back, and I'm like, finally. And I got a call back, went to the callback, and then didn't get it. And then the next year I auditioned. I don't remember if it was annually or if it was biannually, but at the next audition, I didn't get a call back after the last time I had. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know when this is going to happen. And I'd been doing it every day for 10 years. Like, just, I got to make this happen. I got to make this happen. And then finally I got on Tourco, but at this point now I just had been like, fuck it. And I was putting up sketch shows with my comedy partners or anyone that would do for years. I had so much material now of sketch and a bunch of improv groups and everything that I was like, just sort of doing it on my own. So I was pretty seasoned by the time I even got to, I don't know what the math was that finally made it onto Tourco. Maybe they were just like, she's clearly not going to go away. I don't know. But I got onto Greenco, and it was a mess. Like, it was a company that like no one got along with each other. There was like bad blood between a few people and like weird tension. And I was so excited to be touring, and I didn't realize it till, we were shoving our sweaty show clothes into duffel bags and going back and getting in the Sprinter van or the rented van, that I was like, oh my God, this is what feels like crossing a threshold of a home. It would be like if I had a hometown to go home to, which I don't because my family moved a lot, but like that feeling of like driving past the sign of your hometown and walking into your childhood home. That's what touring felt like to me.
I was going to say, it's a mirror of your childhood.
I grew up in the van.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I love this. But then I only toured for like 3 months before I got snagged to main stage.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, yeah, let's go. I'm ready.
Wow. Snagged to main stage. Like, what's that like? Beth calls you and says, we have a spot. Would you like to do it? Or?
It was so interesting because I had been... So the way I was feeding my improv habit for this decade was I was working at a fucking mega church in the suburbs.
What?
Because, when I graduated from college, I didn't think I had any skills. I'd gone to a Christian college. It was the only way I could pay for college was that my dad was now teaching at a Christian college in the suburbs of Chicago in Elgin, Illinois, Judson College. And so I was able to go tuition free to a coalition of like small Christian colleges. So I was like, oh, I guess I have to, if I have a free college education, it's still a liberal arts education. I ended up going to this little Church of God school in Indiana, and it was just liberal enough that it helped me. And by liberal, I mean like I was allowed to take philosophy classes and science. You know what I mean?
You were allowed to know stuff.
Yeah. And I took a philosophy class in college, and I remember really liking my philosophy professor, and he gave me a book. He's like, I want you to read this book and write a paper on it for me. And he hands me this book called The Myth of Satan. And I remember being like, what the fuck are you talking about? The Myth of Satan. Like, what is going on here? And as I read that book and like really as the belief system that I had been given started to crumble like a Jenga. It was sort of death by a thousand cuts, you know? I was like, I don't like the fucking homophobic shit, and I don't like the sexist shit, and I don't like that. But I was just in such rebellion to it, still believing that it was the truth. But then as I started to become educated, I was like, oh, wow. And the whole motherfucking thing collapsed. And wait, why am I talking about this?
Talking about that you worked at a mega church as your day job.
So I had this degree in Bible and religion, and drama was my other major. And so I was like, I don't have any life skills. I don't have anything, but I know the language of the evangelical world. I'm bilingual. I speak English and I speak evangelical. And I was able to go get this job at this mega church. And I was doing the creative programming for their children's program called Promised Land, where I would do drama. I would write and perform like dramas and little like vignettes and skits and sketches and shit for the children's ministry, for the kids. And so while all the grown-ups were in the big lush auditorium, I was entertaining their kids. And I was like, well, it sucks that I'm working at a fucking church, but it's like, it's allowing me to live. I live in Chicago, commute out there. I had money to like get myself started in Chicago. And then the crazy ass shit that happened in the church is I just started moving straight up through it to where the highest point of leadership in the church, they were like, we want you on the creative team. We want you programming all of our weekend services. And then I was like sitting in the highest tables of leadership in this goddamn mega church. And as over the course of this decade, as this is happening, I'm deconverting and I'm deprogramming. I remember sitting in the green room of this massive megachurch, and there was a Time magazine about Mother Teresa sort of having a crisis of faith late in her life. And I was reading that. I was like, what? And I realized, I was like, over this decade, I've stopped believing. I've stopped believing in the entire message that this place is pushing.
Despite what Journey specifically told you not to do. Journey keeps saying, don't stop believing. And yet you did.
Don't stop. And that's a compelling fucking tune.
Yeah.
So,
streetlights, people. Yeah.
So I was like, so then I felt deeply closeted because I was like, I am not one of you. And now I have to hide for my income. I have to hide that I'm not. Because if I was honest about who I was, I would be fired immediately. And so then I'm closeting myself in this weird way. And then, but I was like, you know what? Even if I don't believe it, if this place is doing good in the world and they're like doing these missions and helping feed hungry people and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But then I started to see through all of it. And I was like, I don't think that they're doing good. This might be the Death Star. This might be, and I'm a Jedi Knight, and I've been fucking.
And you're an embedded reporter, basically.
I was like,
yeah.
I am in imperial clothing, and I'm a fucking Jedi. And
it's making my heart race.
It was
I'm not kidding.
I still have nightmares about this place.
Oof.
And meanwhile, I'm coming back into the city. I'm having sex. I'm drinking. I'm doing drugs. All the things I'm not supposed to be doing. You know, and I remember my supervisor would have like one-on-ones with me and be like, "So, are you dating anyone? How is it that you're not having sex?" Like deep, like my boss talking to me about my sex and sexuality and like so fucking inappropriate,
yeah,
illegal.
None of your business, sir.
Yeah.
Put a hand on a different tube top.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that was really bad.
Wild.
But I felt so like I have to have this paycheck or whatever. And when I finally got to the point where I was like, I can't do it. I had just started the touring company, and you can't live off of touring money. You still have to have something else to supplement to be able to live in Chicago. And so I was trying to figure out like, okay, I can go back to serving tables. I can figure it out. I've always served tables. I've always known how to do that. And I was like, I'm just gonna quit. And I went in and I gave him my laptop and my office keys and everything. And as I was driving out of the parking lot, I was shaking because I was like, I have driven into this parking lot for a fucking decade, day in, day out, summertime, wintertime, hungover. Like I've driven to this place and I'm never coming back. I'm driving out of this driveway and I'm never coming back. And I was shaking and I was so scared because I was like, I don't know what's next. Improv has taught me that like, if you jump, the net will appear.
One of my favorite quotes.
Like, will the thing that I love, can I trust it to fucking support me? And I got on I-90 and this was like, and I had this like shitty flip phone. And I'm driving down I-90 back into Chicago, and I look at my phone, and it says, Allison Riley. And I was like, why the fuck is Allison Riley calling me? She was the producer of the main stage show, the main stage cast. And I answered the phone, and she was like, hey, Allie, what's up? And I was like, oh, I'm just, it's like
driving into the abyss of terror that will be my new reality. What's up with you?
Right. I was like, I think I'm about to be homeless and maybe have to do sex work. And she was like, are you driving? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, can you pull over? And I was like, yeah, which I totally couldn't. I was on fucking I-90. And so I was like, okay. And so then I tried to drive like gentler. And I was like, I pulled over. And I was like, and she was like, okay. And she believed me. And she was like, I was just calling because I was wondering if you would like to join the cast of the main stage. I mean, talk about the net appearing. And
Immediately.
And one of my best friends, Shelly Gossman, tells me that all the time. She's like, hey, Hal, like in whatever I'm, spinning out about, she's like, when you leap, the net doesn't always immediately appear. Sometimes you're in a free fall for a while that feels scary and you just still have to live by faith. But like you are someone where it actually has like literally immediately appeared. Mm-hmm. She reminds me of that all the time. I'm like, holy shit, if there was ever a sign from your ancestors or the universe or whatever the fuck, it was like, wow, it happened that day.
I love like secular spiritual shit and new age science and all of these things of like, yeah, why can't we believe that there's many dimensions as string theory proves,
absolutely.
And like all the stuff that we see as magic, I think like could be real. I don't know.
Absolutely.
And one of my like spiritual mentors years ago told me that like the more your consciousness elevates to you like being aligned with your true self, some would call it a soul journey or whatever you want to say, like but the more you are aligned with that truth and living as who you are, you'll notice that you're living that way because your manifestations happen more rapidly. Like the time shrinks between you wanting something and it appearing. Who knows if that's real? But there have been many times in my life where I'm like, oh, whoa, yeah, that rings true. And this is an example to me. It's like the moment you had the courage to drop your keys and your laptop off and say, this is not for me. This is not who I am. Even though it was terrifying, it's like immediately your new life rushed in to meet you. And the thing that had always been this dream that you'd been like working at for years, It's really remarkable.
Yeah.
And another example of the identifying the thing that scares you, and that ends up being the portal to the new wonderful open space.
Yep. And the IO thing was always follow the fear.
Yeah.
It was right there on the t-shirt.
Yeah. Did their t-shirts used to say that?
Yeah, I think
that.
so.
Yeah.
Or it was on the, I always remember at Second City, they always had that thing that said like Temple of Satire. And at IO, I remember it always being like, follow the fear.
Yeah. And the UCB hoodies are don't think. Like everyone has their mantra, right?
Yeah. I love the, in St. Louis, the Improv Shop, their logo on their hoodies. I love it so much. It's the asterisk butthole that Vonnegut, do you in Breakfast of Champions?
Yeah.
Vonnegut draws this thing that just looks like a line drawing of a asterisk with the lots of lines, and he's like, "This is a butthole." That's the Improv Shop's logo, and I'm like, "That's the coolest improv logo ever," and it's because of the Susan Messing quote: "If you're not having fun, you're the asshole," and that's their whole thing: is if you're not having fun, you're the asshole. So put an asshole on a hoodie and. I have that hoodie. I love that hoodie.
What a great hoodie. Yeah, cool. What was your experience on main stage like? And also, I'm such a huge Tim Robinson fan. What was it like to work with him? And what was the whole journey?
I just was thinking about one of the things that didn't make it into the show that is one of the funniest Timmy Robinson, when we were in process creating the new review, you would just try new stuff every night. And it was such a delight and pleasure to be there for the things that Timmy Robinson was throwing up, because the things he was putting up were like one of them was a guy who's driving down the road and you say I only hear what I want to, comes on the radio and he's like, oh, like I know I'm supposed to fucking hate this song. He like turns it up and he's like, don't listen hard, don't pay attention. He like turns it up and he's like fucking rocking out and he's singing this Lisa Loeb song at the top of his fucking lungs and gets in a terrible car accident, is thrown from the car, and when the EMTs come, that it's like blasting from his car, and he's like not as worried about the EMTs trying to fix his like femur sticking out. He's like trying to fucking turn off so that they don't know he was listening to Lisa Loeb. I'm like, how did that not make it in?
Yeah. That's so funny.
But yeah, he and Sam, it was so fun because they were together, and it was so fun to play with them. Sam Richardson, one of the best,
another brilliant genius. Yeah.
Brilliant genius. He had a scene that made it into the review called Black Swan, where he came out in a bathrobe with a cigarette hanging from his lips. And he was this fucking dancer who had to do all these fucking bachelorette parties. And I was the enthusiastic bachelorette that's just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. And he's like, put the money down or whatever. And as soon as I put the money down, this like, oh God, I wish I could remember what song came on. And he totally transforms and he throws his bathrobe off and he's just wearing these bright pink, tight bikini underpants. And his like beautiful fucking body and skin coming out of this thing. And I think the audience every night was just like, oh my God. And then Sam just danced his fucking heart out in these pink underpants while I got to sit there and just take it in live every single night. It was the best. It was
so great.
It was the best. I was like, I was in heaven. I mean, I took it really seriously and I worked so hard in process and I pinched myself the whole way. I can honestly, one of the things I'm maybe most grateful for is that I never took any of it for granted. I was pinching myself the entire fucking time. And yeah, so grateful, knew how special it was. And that it's amazing that after like, it's basically where you and I are back to now of just like, how do we get people in seats to see these shows? You know,
Yeah.
It was such a dream to show up and there were 350 people there every night and I didn't have to be going to Kinko's and printing posters and putting them up and flyering and going out and begging and selling.
Yeah, you didn't have to ask the same two friends to come every time who feel like they're doing you a favor. And yeah,
to have a full room of people who are there to fucking laugh. What a gift. And it was so fun too, because like I'm in love with satire. I'm in love with the the concept I learned in Chicago, not only of treating your scene partners as poets and geniuses, but also to imagine that the audience is as sophisticated, if not more, than you at all times, and to treat your audience as smarter than you and to play to the top of your intelligence and all that stuff. Like, and there was a theatricality to it in the era I came up in Chicago, I'd say in the aughts. There was such a theatricality to improv where we treated it like live theater.
Yeah.
That really, really spoke to me. Because I think performance for me comes from what I didn't realize when I was young because I was undiagnosed, but I'm on the spectrum. And one of my special interests, my main special interest as someone who can very much hyper-focus is humans and being highly, highly masked, which is what I've since discovered. I'm such a highly masked, neuro-spicy person, with humans being my special interest, that I'm always trying to just understand humans and mimic them. And I think that that's why I was so compelled to do acting, was because I'm like, oh, it's a legitimate way of doing what I do all day long.
It's professional masking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're rewarded for doing it accurately. Yeah.
And so it came very naturally to me. And then obviously when I discovered the community and the I've got your back part of improv, then I was like, I'm not just hook, line, and sinker. I've swallowed the whole boat.
What a great quote. Oh man, that's such a great quote. We are racing towards being out of time and I don't want to lose anything. Can we do some rapid fire improv questions?
Hell yeah.
What are your favorite types of characters to play?
Unapologetically saying terrible things. Children who are wise beyond their years. Older ladies who got no fucks left and revel in horrifying you.
Can we meet one of those characters?
Yes, well, here's the problem. Is that so I'm starring in Guys and Dolls on Broadway. I'm starring opposite Peter Gallagher, all right? Most gorgeous man in Hollywood. But the thing he doesn't know is I'm playing the general. We're in Guys and Dolls. I'm playing the general. I have no makeup on, so he doesn't know I'm a beautiful woman. But he can tell I've got a rack under here. I've got the best set in the biz. So on his very last night, I waited till he hit his high note, and then I flashed him from the wings. He raced toward me in the dark. The worst mistake I ever made was closing my robe before we embraced.
So will you be making a deposit or a withdrawal today?
Exactly. Yeah. Just sexually harassing people anywhere she goes. But
the specific of Peter Gallagher.
Most gorgeous man in Hollywood.
Mark my words. If I had a second chance, you wouldn't have to bribe me with a penny. I'd be in there rolling around. Yeah, you play those like just deep characters so well. And yeah, accurate masking. It's really great. Have you ever done like a character show, like a one person?
Yeah, I did New Faces of all characters for JFL in Montreal, and like had a great time. That's how I met Mary Holland. Because we were in the same showcase. Yeah, I love her so much.
Yeah.
But I think like that for me, like I really dive into pretty heavy character because it's like safer for me in terms of like just that deep primal like fear of belonging. The closer I am to me on stage, the more uncomfortable I get because yeah, I'm that's my free time to not be me. I have to be myself 23 and a half hours a day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. More rapid fire questions. You said earlier when you were charting shows, you were like, premise, no, not premise. That doesn't serve me. Are you anti-premise or is that just not your inroad?
For me, I noticed that it makes me a bad listener because I'm driving for something like with a white knuckled grip. And so, and that like fucks me up on stage. So I noticed like I would diagram even my own play and I would see that, this is like very spectrumy, but I was like, oh, I almost always initiate, which means that I'm trying to control it. Because I'm afraid if you initiate something I'm unfamiliar with, and now we're talking about the NFL, and I don't know anything about the NFL, I've like set myself off kilter.
Yeah.
And so then I would be like, okay, I would force myself for weeks on end to never initiate, to walk in as like open-handed and blank slate as I possibly could. And in so doing, what I kind of learned there was just to start matching the energy of whatever my scene partner was doing. And that even if it was a scene where you were talking in great detail about NFL stuff, I can either speak about NFL stuff that's all bullshit and treat it as real. And if you're a good scene partner, you're going to treat it as real, even if I like say, you know,
yeah, let's do that right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So you started off with a made up NFL thing, but I'll support it.
Oh yeah, I'd say ever since Peter Nashville's been kicking for Dallas, everything's been going wrong.
Oh, of course. I mean, the first mistake in the world was picking up Nashville. What they need is a stronger defensive line, and they need a better tight end, you know.
Honestly, I think they go for Nashville because he was good in college and he's tall. And tall guys are allowed to do anything they want.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, tall kickers too, longer leg, bigger reach, you know.
That's right.
Oh, hold on. There's they just got 1st and 10.
Oh. Man. Those cheerleaders aren't even cheering. That's dancing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the evolution of it, you know. Maybe that's why we're tanking.
See, but my fear is that like I would say Johnny Nashville or whatever, and you'd be like, that's not the kicker for Dallas.
Right.
And then I just realized like, oh, I can double down too. If a scene partner denies me, I can be like, buddy, you ain't keeping up on. Of course it is. I'll just double down, you know.
Right.
Or I can make the scene about if I'm in an NFL scene, I can also just be the person who won't shut up about wine because that's something I do know about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, yeah. If a bad or curmudgeonly or stubborn or rigid scene partner is gonna like try to show off that they know, like if their ego prevents them from supporting Johnny Nashville or whatever,
yeah,
and they rigidly have to prove that they know the actual kicker from Dallas, then they might do that, So like, that's not, Trevor Mitchell or what, I'm making up another name because I don't know. But like it's Trevor Mitchell, and you could be like, oh well, Johnny Nashville is gonna be, he's on the roster. He's just not. They keep benching him or whatever. Yeah, but he's bringing bad luck to the team.
Yeah,
And
what's funny is even as we did that, I was like, Jesus Christ, I actually could hang in an NFL scene. Even when you said 1st and 10, I was like, wait, I do know what that is. Like, and so you kind of can go with it.
For sure. I play on a team with a lot of comic book nerds, and the amount of scenes over the years that have been initiated as, it doesn't happen so much anymore, but like in a world of Marvel or of comic book or whatever, and I don't know anything. And that world is too big for me to even start. I've tried. I'm all about educating yourself and like filling in your cultural blind spots, but it's too vast. It's like asking me to like draw every grain of sand in the Grand Canyon. It's like I don't have enough free time to do this. So, but if you mirror them and like go along with it, you can find a path, know. And it's fun too when they say some specific reference and the audience can kind of tell, I think, when you don't know, if they're like, we're having a problem with Cyclops, and it's like, that's Cyclops, my God. Like they know because you're not adding more references and just diving into the emotion more. So like in the first, we just got 1st and 10. Whew. All right, let's see what we can do with this 1st and 10. Let's see what we can make out of this. We got to make something out of it.
Or also I also learned that like it's not radio. You don't have to fear silence. Like I remember Rory Scovel saying, this is stand up, but him saying something about like, sometimes I will force myself to say something, walk all the way to one end of the stage in silence, walk all the way back to the other side in complete silence, and then come back to where I was standing before I'll let myself speak.
Wow.
Like to force silence, because actually we're so afraid of it, but what it does is make the audience go like this. And lean in. And I also started to notice that like a lot of times the quietest person in the scene is my favorite, most interesting person.
Yeah.
2 people can be going on with whatever clever fucking dialogue they're doing. One time I watched a scene, I think this was in class. I was having my students work on like object work and space work and stuff and explore their environment. And there was a scene where it was like a Victorian parlor scene where 2 people were playing cards at this table and drinking tea. And the lady was standing by the piano, like about to sing with a accompanist. And everyone in the scene was talking. But there was one guy sitting in the back of the parlor who was playing with this little pistol, and he couldn't get it to work. And he was like cleaning it in front of him, and he was trying to shoot himself in the head through the entire scene. And it never worked. And he kept working this pistol over and over and over. And it was like, that's the best part of this whole scene is that like someone had the courage and imagination to explore their environment and start making discoveries of like, well, what else is here?
Yeah.
I don't know how to speak as if I'm a Victorian person in a parlor. I don't know any card games or whatever, but I have wanted to kill myself before. And,
yeah, right.
I'll explore that.
Yeah. Play what feels fun to you, and play from a place that your instinct is guiding and driving. Your instinct is not going to be driving from a place of specific names of football players that you don't know.
Yeah.
But if it occurs to you, if this person's like, Aaron Rodgers is just tanking this play, you can say like, do we want to talk about the divorce? Or, it's like that now that becomes the game of the scene. Yeah.
That's a great one.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a good one. You can have that one.
I'm keeping that one.
Yeah.
And also I think matching energy saves your ass in a lot of times. My brain someone comes in with an initiation and I do this ipso facto of like, if that's the initiation, then I am hereby required to fill in the blank. And instead match it, which always kind of fucked me over too. So if somebody came in and they're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You left the refrigerator door open again and now all my shit went bad, which is like that's my greatest fear of an improv suggestion of like a problem from the beginning. But it's amazing how often you will get that on stage.
A problem
people.
that's your fault.
That's your
the other
fault.
Person's mad. And
I feel like the ipso facto of that is like, oh shit, oh God. And then I have to do this thing of like, no, I'm not. It's okay. I'll redo your groceries. fucking unfun scene.
Yeah.
But like if somebody comes in and like, you idiot, you whatever, it's so much more fun to be like, oh, I'm an idiot. Like, yeah. If you're mad at me, that's what I'm matching. I'm as mad at me. And I'm going to heighten how bad and how mad I am at me. And now I have something to do.
Yeah. You're right. I'm so stupid.
Right. I don't even know why and then I can like start falling all over the place and finding other things I fucked up and being like, you're right. I don't even know why I should be, then I get to explore.
How did I even fall on the floor? I normally don't even deserve gravity.
I'll stay here.
Yeah. Will Hines teaches a tactic of like aggressively accepting an accusation. So if someone comes in hot with like, you idiot, you left the refrigerator open, now everything's so, I was like, yeah. Did you know, according to Scientific American, if you don't de-thaw everything at least once a year, you are encouraging new strains of bacteria because we need to make super bacterias that will kill the. I'm just talking out my ass right now, but it's like just saying like I did, and you should be thanking me or whatever.
You're that kitty fiddler who was touching kids in the neighborhood. I'll just be like, I served my time. I served my time.
And I, it's so funny. I served my time.
Otherwise, how can I be here?
Absolved,
Served my time.
Yeah. And I got the tattoo covered up. It doesn't exist anymore.
Doesn't exist.
They changed it into a Tweety bird.
Yep. Only got it to survive in the clinker. Had to do what I had to do.
Yeah.
Doesn't represent who I am now. You know what I mean? You can't fault Shaquille O'Neal for once having been 5'4". He has since grown. I have too.
I mean, I could live in that world all day. It's so funny. Yeah. There's so many ways that the water can trickle down the hill.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I think our neural pathways, because of how we are in life or because of other examples of like scripted TV that we see that are fighty or the arguments or whatever, the trail is carved by those pellets of water, beads of water. But if we look to the rest of the hill, we go like, oh no, you can do this, try this.
Yeah.
We don't have to fight. We don't have to only do references.
Yeah.
I don't have to know football.
Yeah.
More rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You said you loved satire. What do you love about satire?
I find it very compelling to I remember learning in Chicago that like if you have commentary that you want to say about a group of people, for instance, like you want to create an indicting piece on white supremacists or misogynists or whatever, you have something to say about that. The way to do that is to become that person. Like nobody ever gives a shit about your soapbox, your facts, your whatever. What you have to do is humanize that person. I find that so compelling to actually humanize and find something human and something to like about even despicable characters. And in so doing, if you're also funny, comedy is disarming to people. They've set their weapons down and their shields down for a moment, and we can kind of have this reciprocity, this connection by embodying. This is a Tom Hanks day. Remember in Black Jeopardy when Tom Hanks was playing a MAGA person and Keenan was like, "You're cool, high five," and like and Tom Hanks did this like sort of like backed up like fear. It was so subtle, but he was like humanizing that MAGA person and being like, at the bottom of it is fear. Like he's afraid. There's a human in there who's afraid. Might not even know why he's afraid of Keenan's character or whatever, but that commentary I think is so much stronger than like telling white supremacist and idiot people that they're fucking idiots. It's never gonna. And so that's really compelling to me. And I feel like satire, who knows how long it's got. Right. Because I noticed the things that, like, my current podcast is a satire, and the clips that go viral are the things where people are like, this is not, they think it's real.
Yeah. I've noticed that happening. It's the internet syndrome and a lack of understanding of sarcasm and irony, and all of that stuff feels really strangled out of the newer generations.
Yeah. And the division is getting so stark. arc where I feel like when I first started satire, we were still able, both sides, to kind of laugh at ourselves and each other. And I feel like that's kind of going away.
Yeah.
But there is something, I still think that it's so easy for me to want to write off a MAGA person and just be like, shut it down. And that might be part of the problem. And with satire, trying to get inside them and understand them and humanize them, to me feels like one last grasp at understanding each other. Because I also think that that's why improv is my greatest love, is that it's my favorite vice. It's my favorite high. I get high on when you do a show with people where you're connecting with each other, you're connecting with your own inner weirdo, and you're connecting with the audience. That's a magic that I think is untouchable, and it's the drug I've been chasing my whole life. It's what I'm chasing with every drug I ever take, is what I get from improv, which is the magic of that connection.
It is nature's MDMA.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's just all love.
Yeah.
And there's an acceptance of yourself and each other in the moment of being present. And also, it's really the other reason I think it's my great love is because I truly believe improv called me to it, because its tenets and lessons are what I as a human needed to learn for my life lessons. And I also think that, like, and in terms of ancestors and like why I'm here to have a human experience. But I also believe that my contribution to the tribe has always been storytelling. And so improv is just my form of storytelling, and also finding belonging and connecting with other human beings and tapping into the greatest high, the greatest drug, the purest magic of all time.
Wow. On that note, are you making a deposit or a withdrawal today? No.
I'll be doing neither, but would you like to see this gorgeous set?
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
That's a wreck, huh?
Is that Vaseline on those?
Yeah, you got to keep the jammers smooth.
Okay. It's getting on your shirt. But what would you like to plug?
My podcast, Mega, improvised satire from the staff of a fictional mega church. Ryan has done it. You're about to do it.
I'm so excited.
So excited. And my bestie Katie Rich and I are coming out with iHeart. We're doing a hard comedy called Soccer Moms that's coming up, where we play two soccer moms who are so bored at their kids' youth soccer games that we start doing a podcast from the back of her Honda Odyssey while we tailgate youth soccer.
Perfect.
So that'll be really fun. And that's going to be we're just going to have all of our comedy friends come on and play people in the world of the show.
Great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Coming soon from iHeart.
From iHeart. And Katie Rich is one of the all-time greats as well.
And she knows everything about the NFL. She's a super sporty.
Which is why she's a good improviser.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. I really can't thank you enough for this. And I think the world of you.
Same.
And I can't wait to hang out more.
Same. I'm so excited. I look forward to keeping our relationship exclusively and only on stage.
Yes. All right. If you like this podcast, you can support us and get a ton of bonus content over at yesalso.supercast.com. If you have a question about improv that you'd like us to answer on one of our future Q&A episodes, send it on over to yesalsopod@gmail.com. Remember to follow us on Instagram at yesalsopod, and keep sharing us with your improv communities. We love the love. If you're a theater who would like to host us for a live recording and improv show, let us know at yesalsopod@gmail.com. A huge shout out to Ryan Rosenberg, who produced this thing with his generous help and his unlimited knowledge about all things podcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. No, we won't, Susie. That's not how podcasts work. They won't even see us. They will listen to us. So it's actually the opposite of both things you said. Thanks for listening, and you will listen to us next week. Maybe. We don't know.